Well, good morning. It is Monday, March 9th, and you are joining us for Live Impact News on 13 News Now Plus. My name is Eugene Daniel. I'm in studio right now with producer Sarah Calloway right there waving to you, and meteorologist Craig Moeller here on as we start this week. A little foggy this morning after a really beautiful weekend, Craig.
Wait a
It
second.
was.
Whoa, we're talking weather. I thought you guys brought me on to talk about the start of NFL free agency that starts in an hour.
You know what? The clock is ticking. We already do have a few things we know about the NFL.
Is there stuff coming?
It is, yeah. Tua is officially gone for Miami. Like, that's happening. Tua's gone.
Wow, I did not.
They're moving on. The owner put that out there just a few moments ago. So, depending on how you feel about that, things might be looking brighter or a little more dim in Miami.
This is what I love about Live Impact News. I thought I would just rattle, the cage a little bit, try to catch Eugene. He's like, as a matter of fact, Craig, here at Live Impact News, we got you covered. So good stuff, good stuff. I assume you guys do want to talk weather.
We do because, look at this right now on our screen here, Craig. You can see, I don't even know, what camera is this?
So that is the tower
cam?
camera. Yeah, that's from atop the tower. And it's up there. We're up a couple hundred feet or a few hundred feet on the tower with that particular view. But you can see the condensation on the housing. We've had low clouds, fog out there this morning. Let's look at the visibilities right now. And Eugene, I know you were with me throughout the morning show, so you saw how poor the visibility was early this morning. Now places like Virginia Beach and Norfolk, we're seeing 6 miles visibility. It got a lot better initially down around the Albemarle Sound, but the visibility has gotten better and better as we've gone throughout the morning. And now we're looking pretty good. You get up towards Williamsburg, you still have some fog there. And I know, Sarah, you have the magic fingers here. You can select some different sky views. Let's take a look at what we have out there. And as we begin, I'll tell you what, you pick. We'll go down to the ocean front. This is one of the areas where things have improved. As I mentioned, at Oceana right now, Virginia Beach, the official kind of reporting station there at Oceana, 6 miles visibility, and things are looking better there at the ocean front. Earlier, we were down to about a quarter to half mile visibility, so a lot better there. Up in the peninsula, if you want to select one of those cameras, we could take a look from the Air and Space Center in Hampton. You see the carousel there. Again, the sky's starting to lift. Earlier, you wouldn't have been able to make out some of the buildings here around the Hampton River. So visibility still down at Langley Air Force Base right now, 1.5 miles, but it is improving. I don't know if we have one of the cameras up in Williamsburg, Sarah. If you have one, do we have one or no? It's okay if we don't.
I'll try to find one. You keep going. I'll try to find one from maybe the 511
or something, and you can see there's still fog. But already that's the big one right there. Taking a look at Oyster Point there, City Center in Newport News. Earlier, again, we could hardly see the buildings across the pond right there, the fountain. So again, things are improving. That's the bottom line. Now, my concern, and I want to revisit the severe weather, and I know, Sarah, this was something we talked a lot about on the weather desk, the fact that there were deadly tornadoes in Michigan. Over the weekend, we had deadly tornadoes in Oklahoma last week with a mother and daughter losing their lives. This was a really rough weekend. When we take a look at what's happening right now, we have a new thunderstorm watch that's been posted out over Arkansas, and we're going to continue to watch for the potential for strong to severe storms there. I'll just quickly hit on that watch area, and we'll see what it pulls up. This watch is in place. It includes Hot Springs, Little Rock, and Pine Bluff. About 722,000 people under that watch, and that's going to run through this afternoon. So that gives you a sense of what's out there right now. As we take a little closer look, we had some rough weather. A couple of thunderstorm warnings popped up over Oklahoma, but we've also seen some heavier rains earlier down over Texas. Now there are, let's see, I don't think there are any active warnings now, just that watch, which runs through this afternoon. But we're going to get into, there's that cell that I was looking at earlier. We had a warning there as it passed around Antlers and Clayton, that moving off to the east now and approaching the watch area. But here's the deal, guys. As we take a look, you can see the warnings that were out a little earlier. Look at the severe weather outlook here over the coming days. Okay. Today, level 2 threat. We have 5 different levels that we talk about. There's that first level, which is marginal. That means there could be isolated severe storms anywhere in the green, okay? When you get to yellow, that's level 2, meaning a slight risk. There could be, or will more likely be, scattered severe storms in that area. So we're talking about areas from Arkansas back through Mississippi and Alabama. And there's your elevated tornado risk. Again, it's not a super high risk, but a couple of isolated tornadoes, a possibility from southern portions of Arkansas and northern Louisiana, Shreveport, Texarkana, Little Rock, all the way up through Memphis, and then areas to the east, including Tupelo, Mississippi, Jackson, back over to Birmingham and Montgomery, Alabama. So these areas, again, with that elevated risk for tornadoes. Eugene, again, you've got family down there in Louisiana. It's the northern part of Louisiana there that has that risk.
Yeah, I'm going to need to make sure that they are aware. I mean, they typically are pretty locked in, but I haven't talked to them today. So now I'm seeing this. You already know it's custom. Got to send them that text after the show.
And this is a time of year where they start to get into it. So they're probably well aware that stronger wind potential really across northern Mississippi and central Alabama. And then you've got to look out for the larger hail all the way down through Alexandria. You can see, again, some of those areas you got to watch. Even, you think about like Baton Rouge and even New Orleans, south of the area, you could still have a couple of stray stronger storms. The focus is a little farther to the north, but that large hail, 2-inch diameter or greater.
Can I ask you how much rain, again, is expected to come through this as well? Is that considered to be something that we see with this storm?
I will show you there is just a level 1 kind of threat for excessive rainfall.
Okay.
It's not as great a threat with this particular thing. I haven't pulled specific amounts, but as far as the overall kind of threat or tier of excessive rainfall, I'll just pull up the outlook for today. There you go. Same area, a level 1. So there could be some isolated flash flooding with some of the heavier cells. But again, I think the hail is going to be the greatest concern, and maybe an isolated tornado. Now that's for today. Take a look here, and you're going to get into tomorrow. Now we're looking at level 2 flash flood threats, and that extends from central portions of North Texas, including the Dallas-Fort Worth areas, up through southern Oklahoma. Looks like maybe around Tulsa or just a little south, just south of Oklahoma City, but very close. And then northern Missouri from my old stomping grounds in Mizzou, Columbia, Missouri, back out through Kansas City, northeast Missouri through central Illinois, northern Indiana, and Chicagoland. There is that level 2 flood threat. So some flash flooding, a possibility there. Severe weather threat. This is for Tuesday. And Sarah, this is really what I wanted to key in on this. You've got a level 3 threat. That's what we call an enhanced threat. So there's your marginal threat's level 1, slight risk is level 2, level 3 is now enhanced, and that does include parts of Missouri and Illinois very close to Chicago. And now when you look at the tornadic threat, now we have to worry about maybe another little outbreak there from northern Missouri across Illinois and into Indiana. That area is shaded in red. Once you get into that, you're looking at a pretty good chance for at least a handful of tornado warnings or tornadic cells. Doesn't always mean it's going to happen, but when we see even a level 2 threat, it's like, hey, you guys really need to pay attention. You get to that red or the 3rd or 4th tier, and you start talking about the potential for outbreaks. So we want folks to be mindful of that. That 10%, that's 10% chance of a tornado occurring within 25 miles of any given point. I know it's kind of confusing. That's why we just talk about it in terms of tiers. But the bottom line is where you see red representing that 3rd elevated tier, just know that we could have several tornadoes in that area.
And that's for tomorrow.
That's for tomorrow.
Any specific time frame we're thinking?
It'll be as the system moves. I think it would be more during the afternoon with the peak heating, but we'll have to pay attention. Again, I honestly haven't timed it all out. I've been so busy pulling together the weather desk with all these other elements, but I think it times out pretty well with the afternoon, the peak heating. You lose a lot of that energy. As you take a look there, Missouri and Illinois there, Kansas City, again, Jeff City, just on the edge, Columbia, northward places like Mexico and Moberly, Missouri. You get up into Kirksville over to Quincy, Illinois, Peoria. I know, Eugene, you're
I lived there for
very
8
familiar.
years.
Yeah,
I lived there for
Peoria.
8 years in Peoria. And so, just seeing it right in the middle of that big red dot.
You did some work with youth groups out there, didn't you?
Oh,
Some
absolutely. I
ministry
mean,
work?
I
So
consider people my family who are still there. I was talking to them this morning,
you
coincidentally.
see, they are in the heart of it.
Yeah,
so
I
they
see it. Yeah.
Definitely want to make sure all of them are very weather aware. That's for tomorrow. Also, large hail. And we can see here very quickly down to Texas, also the possibility of 2-inch or greater hail. Some strong winds there. Now, as we look ahead to Wednesday, you'll notice how that shifts eastward. And here's where it gets a little more interesting for the Commonwealth. We have a level 2 threat for central and western portions of Pennsylvania, most of West Virginia, southern Ohio, just about all of Kentucky, most of Tennessee, all the way down through portions of Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Arkansas, all under that level 2 threat. And for the Commonwealth, now in Virginia, from the D.C. area, level 1 threat there. It extends down through Charlottesville. Think about Harrisonburg. I think about Stanton. I think about Roanoke, Lexington, some of these areas out to the west. And then into West Virginia, we've got this elevated risk that extends down through Asheville and North Carolina. So folks need to be weather aware, which leads to this. And Sarah, you probably want to take this graphic full just because there is a crazy amount of information on it. But here's what I want folks to know, okay? You can see we've got something going on each day as part of Virginia's Severe Weather Awareness Week. Today, we stress the difference between watches and warnings. Tomorrow, there'll be a tornado drill, and we'll really focus on tornado safety tomorrow. Thunderstorm and lightning safety on Wednesday. Flash flooding. Basically, the mantra, turn around, don't drown. Know what your flood risks are and be prepared to act. And then Friday, general outdoor weather safety, whether it's camping and hiking, outdoor sporting activities. You have to have a plan for sudden weather changes and know how to react. Coming back to watches versus warnings. A watch, Eugene, means conditions are favorable.
Yeah.
The stage is set. The table is set. Doesn't mean you're eating yet. Food hasn't been delivered. But all your flatware's out there. You've got your glass. Maybe somebody poured a little bit of water in. You're ready to go, but you don't have to eat yet. The warning means the food is served or it is here, and now you take action. If you're enjoying dinner, you get to eat. If it's a severe thunderstorm or a tornado you're dealing with, you have to take action. That includes getting to a safe space, staying informed, knowing what's going on around you. Great way to do that with our 13 News Now mobile app. Have access to our live video feeds like what you're watching right now with Live Impact News. If we've got an outbreak and you guys have Live Impact News going on, I'm sure one of the Mets would jump on and kind of talk you through everything.
Yeah.
So that's the big difference.
And speaking to that, I don't have to tell my family because my mom just texted me. She's watching, and so she heard everything you said about what's going on in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Then I just sent a text to all my people in Peoria, making sure that they are alert and aware for tomorrow also. So to what Craig said, this can be a great platform whenever there is a potential for severe weather. Quick question that I have for you, Craig. I know the difference between a watch and a warning, but maybe this will help somebody out there. You just explained it very well. But for a warning, does that mean that we also there is a confirmed spotting of a tornado, or does it necessarily have to be that?
It means it's happening.
Gotcha.
Okay, so with tornadoes in particular, you can have, and you know what, Eugene, I'm going to take this. This map's going to look a little wonky, but we're doing this live, and I'm doing it from a laptop. So let me just see if I can do this here. I'm going to try to bring up a regional depiction of what's going on. So let me see if I can zoom in, and we're going to, hang on a second. Here we go. And I'm going to try to just adjust. There's my camera. Where are you, camera? Scene camera. Ta-da! Okay, so I'm going to pull back the other way here, and we're going to take a look at those storms because you were asking about that with the Futurecast. This is for Tuesday. Those storms erupting as we go. Look at that. Wouldn't you know that would do that? Hang on one more time. Thank you guys for your patience on this. I'm just adjusting. Again, all of this live and on the fly. Okay. So let me just stop that. We're just going to set a quick point there. All right, now as we go forward, taking a look, you can see this afternoon. You see some of the storms popping up down across the southern parts of the area. That's down into Alabama and Mississippi there. This is one of the models. As we go forward through Monday evening and overnight, some pretty strong storms northern parts of Alabama into Georgia. As far as the threat goes on Tuesday, this is the graph model. We'll see when it starts to blow things up. It's really not too bad early Tuesday. So this is interesting, Eugene. You bring this up. Look at the storms out across Oklahoma into Kansas. This is Tuesday evening. Now, this is one of our models, the graph, but it really brings that strong to severe storm threat in Tuesday night, which brings about another point. That's for that area in Peoria there. So maybe... Yeah,
Thank you for that timeline. That helps out a lot. Yeah,
I had to take a look at that. Now, I bring this up, all right, because that brings a whole nother level of the need for awareness. At night, it is more important than ever that people have cell phones, charged up and at the ready. You're good to go, right? You want to make sure you've got that. Hang on 1 second. Oh, my computer's getting wonky.
While you're doing that, I can speak personally to this scenario from a time in which I covered when I lived in Peoria, obviously, and as a reporter and anchor there was a small town that got hit by a tornado in the middle of the night. And I remember I got sent there. It was actually around maybe 11:30 when it hit. We had just finished our broadcast. They sent me out there, pitch dark when we got out there. Our cameras literally couldn't see anything. We didn't know where we were. We found the first light, which happened to be a staging area by the first responders, etc. Craig, when I tell you we were there all throughout the morning and until the morning, and when the light finally came up was the first time we could see the level of the devastation there. I say that to say there were many people, unfortunately, who were asleep and either slept through alarms, whatever it may be, and I've never let that go on how terrifying that is to be in an area that could potentially be hit by a tornado at night while you're sleeping, which again is why it's so important to have everything that you have. Radio, being tuned in to your meteorologist, knowing the conditions potential, all of that. You have access to it. You need to have it because I never have lost that. It's incredible. Never have lost that.
It's incredible what we have available to help us through. And you think about this, if you lose one cell tower, that's a problem. But there's other cell towers that can still reach you. So, we talk about have your phones charged up and ready to go. Make sure you have a way to get alerts. 13 News Now mobile app, a great way here in Hampton Roads, but you should sign up and make sure you've got access wherever you are. And again, a weather radio, I always start with that because the National Weather Service, when they issue the warning, it automatically pushes out that warning over weather radio, and that will wake you up. So very, very important that you're charged and ready to go. If you lose power, you're still going to get that information. Now, the thing that we were talking about with the warnings and the watches, you had brought up a point, and there was something else that I started to answer, and then I moved away from. I think it was it on the tornadoes? Can't remember.
Exactly. What's the Well, the specific question is, when it's a warning, does that mean that we have actually seen a tornado, or does that not have to be the threshold for it?
Perfect. And and thank you for bringing that back to my attention. So a couple of things. We have tornado warnings based on a couple of things. Either there's visual confirmation, there's a trained spotter, law enforcement, somebody maybe with emergency management, the weather service, or really a lot of times it's law enforcement will confirm. We'll get reports from general population, and we'll get video clips and things. They have to be verified. And what they do is, let's say you are at home and you shoot this tornado and you go, oh my goodness, I think that's a tornado. You send that video in, Weather Service takes a look at that, or maybe you send it in to the TV stations. I mean, a lot of people know how they can get in touch with us. We take a look at it. If it measures up, if it marries up with what we're seeing on the radar, and we can confirm that that isn't just what we call scud clouds. Maybe it's not a tornado. It just kind of looks like a funnel hanging down. We get those, and we understand. I mean, we still want to know if you think you're seeing a tornado, trust me, it's okay to ask and send it in. But what we need to do is we confirm that there's a rotation or something going on. If we get that from a viewer, we will pick up, reach out to the National Weather Service. We've got some channels that we can message them directly through as well and say, guys, we've got confirmation, or a viewer just sent video. You guys need to know about this. So it's really a team effort. Now, there's that way. The other thing is radar confirmed tornado. And the technology has gotten so good with what we call dual polarization radar. We've got these dual pole radars. Started off with different things like NEXRAD and the Doppler radar. We could see winds varying, not just the targets, but we could see motion within the clouds. Now we're able to see varying sizes of debris that's getting blown around. If you see a bunch of things that are all uniform, it's probably rain or something that's going on. When a tornado hits a barn, you don't have uniform debris. You have giant chunks of wood, small bits of hay. You have different bits of things that are picked up, roofing pieces. And when we see a big difference, and again, you're looking at some of the devastation, you get a sense for just how violent these storms can be. When you've got these large variations, we get what we call a debris signature. All of that can also be enough to confirm and trigger a tornado. So, a tornado warning. A watch means everything's there. A warning means either we have high confidence based on what we're seeing on the radar, or somebody's physically spotted it.
And another thing that I typically say in these moments, again, you have it all covered there, Craig, and we know that this week starts, as you said, Severe Weather Preparedness and Awareness Week. Just from my personal experiences of being out there covering these tornadoes, and there have been a few that just absolutely were devastating, and listening to people, shoes. It's one of the things in those moments you may not think about, but if you do have a warning, even honestly, when you have a watch, making sure that you put on some shoes. Why? Because in the unfortunate case that you do get caught up in a tornado, that you do have to come out and emerge, and there's some kind of destruction around you, whether it be homes or you mentioned a barn. It takes nothing for you to step on a nail or step on something, and you can now be injured with that. So making sure whenever you go in that you don't forget to bring with you a pair of shoes that you can put on so that you can then walk outside, no matter what it is.
I would take it a step further and tell you guys, again, with me, a lot of times, I'll sleep, without sharing too much information, like underwear. No, I got boxer briefs, whatever. That's comfortable for sleeping.
Yeah.
Sarah's laughing right now because she can't get this image out of her mind.
Oh.
My point is this.
Rated S for
Not
extreme.
to share the extreme intimate details of Craig's sleeping habits, but my points are, I'm not going to go racing outside in boxer briefs unless a tornado, tears up the house and you got to fend for your life. When the weather's really bad, I'll make sure I've got shorts. I'll make sure, along with the shoes, or if it's really, cold out or whatever, it's not a bad idea to have something quick that you can grab and slip on as you're going out. That's my point.
Right, and part of,
sorry, Sarah again. We've lost our producer.
She's telling us to wrap it up. You mean put on some clothes?
Yeah, she's like, Craig.
But a great point to that, Craig, and I would ask you this, right? A part of being prepared is, we call it go bags.
Yeah.
Right? And you have your supplies ready.
Right.
So wherever you're going to be, wherever that safe space is, and hopefully you've identified a safe space in your home, in your residence, to where you can go on your job, whatever. But especially if it's at your home is what I'm talking about. Just have your bag there.
Yeah.
Have shoes in there, have, clothes in there, have those things there. That way you're not scrambling around searching for it. Wherever it is that is your safe space, especially if it's like a closet in the home.
Yep.
Man, you go there, you grab it, you take it with you, and you have that with you for whenever you emerge and come out of that.
You got to have it. And this is the time to do it again. Before we have severe weather bearing down, just think about how you're going to be prepared for it if something happens. All right, Sarah is actually giving us a wrap now, not just because, like I was talking about staying comfortable. Here's what we have for you, the 7-day forecast. We'll finish up with this. You can see temperatures today, mid-70s, so it's been foggy this morning. It will clear. We're looking good today. On Tuesday, mostly sunny. Temperatures low 80s, low to mid-80s on Wednesday. Here's the thing. On Thursday, right now we've got rain developing. We may add a threat of thunderstorms on Thursday, depending on how things time out. That is going to be a strong front. This frontal boundary will have a history of producing some stronger storms on the other side of the mountains. A lot of times the dynamics change up as it crosses over the mountains and gets closer to the coast. So at this point, we're going to say rain develops, but don't be surprised if we throw a thunderstorm symbol on there as we continue to analyze that threat on Thursday. Behind the front, much cooler. The weekend looks good. Close to average on Friday. Low 60s Saturday, mostly sunny, and 68 on Sunday. That's going to be nice for a good weekend. Do you guys just want a quick peek into next week?
Can we do it? Just real quick, let's do it.
As simple as this.
Yeah.
No, I'm just going to tell you, the models are hinting that it's going to be a lot chillier. So that's it. Just know that you got to take advantage of these 80s while we have them, and the warm weather, even over the weekend, not too bad. Sharply colder. One of the models was even suggesting there could be some more of that word that we don't like to say so
There's
much.
no way.
I don't
Oh,
think
my
so.
gosh. No way.
I don't think so, but the GFS was saying look out. We'll see.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. I'm
It's
kidding.
so far away. I'm waiting for it to all change again.
Yeah.
So we're good.
Yeah,
But it does look like it will get colder next
We'll enjoy the 80s while we have them here over the next few days. And hey, 60s, much better than 30s and 40s, what we were experiencing not that long ago, Craig. So,
you got it.
all right, Craig, thank you. Great stuff today. We appreciate you for coming on and take all the things that he said into account, especially as we are starting the severe weather preparedness week. We got to take a quick break here for Live Impact News, but we have so much more for you on the other side of this break. Thanks for sticking with us here for Live Impact News. I'll tell you right now, we are waiting for Governor Josh Stein of North Carolina to deliver an address about critical budget needs. As you know, we have reported over the last year and several months that they have been unable to reach certain agreements there when it comes to the budget in North Carolina. He is expected to go through some of those. Actually, there he is right there. He is stepping into the room and to the podium right now. Perfect timing. So let's go ahead and listen now to North Carolina Governor Josh Stein as he delivers an address on critical needs for the state's budget.
Offering happy birthday greetings to Lucas over there. Happy birthday. Good morning. As many of you know, North Carolina is the only state in the country that ended 2025 without a budget. But folks may not fully appreciate that when the General Assembly returns to session next month, it will have been more than 2.5 years since the state last passed a comprehensive budget. In that time, many things have changed. The state has added more than 300,000 people. The cost of living has increased by more than 6%, and the federal government is abandoning long-held commitments. Yet we have not had a full budget. So the state keeps operating at a baseline, limping along, so much so that some things are already breaking. The state faces certain critical needs that require immediate attention. That is why I am proposing, and the General Assembly must pass, a critical needs budget. We cannot wait on Medicaid. We cannot wait to keep people safe. We cannot wait to value teachers, nurses, and other public servants. And we cannot wait on many critical services like the SBI and the DMV. Today, I am calling on the General Assembly to fast track a stripped down $1.4 billion critical needs budget to fill the gap. Once that's done, we can move on to the full budget and all of its complexities. Let's start with Medicaid. Last fall, you all will recall, both chambers of the General Assembly agreed that Medicaid in our state was underfunded. Yet despite this agreement, they did not fund Medicaid. Instead, they promised that they would this spring. Well, thank goodness it is spring. It is now time to get it done. If we do not fully fund Medicaid well before the end of the fiscal year, health care for millions of North Carolinians will be in jeopardy and our entire health care system weakened. Medicaid is a lifeline for so many of our neighbors: children, expectant mothers, seniors, people with disabilities, and working families. Importantly, Medicaid benefits all of us because of its essential role sustaining rural hospitals and other providers that everyone uses whether or not they themselves are on Medicaid. In this way, Medicaid undergirds the entire healthcare system. We simply must save it. So I call on the House and the Senate to return to the table and fully fund Medicaid in this critical needs budget. We projected last summer what was needed to fully fund the program. We've been scrutinizing actual Medicaid expenditures through January of this year, and the numbers are on track with what our actuaries estimated. To be made whole, we are asking the General Assembly to once again appropriate $319 million as soon as possible to avoid further unnecessary chaos. Let's work together to protect people's health care, not leave patients and providers out to dry. I'll now invite forward Secretary Sangvi to say more about the need to fund Medicaid.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Governor Stein, for your leadership. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Without $319 million needed to fully fund North Carolina Medicaid program, the program will run out of money before the end of the fiscal year. This has real consequences that people in North Carolina will feel, putting access to health care for more than 3 million people at risk. This is about 1 in 4 people, including over 500,000 babies and children, pregnant women, senior citizens, people with disabilities, and hard-working families. Medicaid is critical to older North Carolinians living in long-term care, like nursing homes and for home health services. It also provides health care coverage and long-term support for people with disabilities, offering services such as doctor visits, hospital care, mental health, and disability services as well. Medicaid is critical to rural communities, as you just heard. In some rural counties, more than half of the population cannot afford health care without the assistance of Medicaid. These are our friends, families, neighbors, members of our communities. As the governor said, the actual spend of the Medicaid program through the summer is as we've calculated through this year, through the summer, as we said at the beginning, is $319 million short. We do a year over year, we do a month over month, every month to understand how much the program is costing. As we've seen through the beginning of this calendar year, we're on track to be short $319 million. Rising healthcare inflation seen across the U.S., higher demand for behavioral health services, new medications, decreases in federal investment, and additional federal requirements have increased costs to run the Medicaid program. The bottom line is this: the General Assembly must fully fund Medicaid in order for people to get access to critical health care. Inaction would mean more uncertainty and disruptions for people and the providers who provide care. Let's work together to avoid that. We're counting on our partners at the General Assembly to act now, as they said they would, to fully fund Medicaid. It is critical to ensure our neighbors and loved ones can continue to receive the care they so critically need. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Secretary Sangvi. People are counting on us to protect their health care. They're also counting on us to protect their safety. To keep people safe, we need more well-trained officers on the beat in their communities, building relationships and building trust. To hire and keep the best people, we must adequately compensate our state's law enforcement officers. But we don't. North Carolina ranks 49th in the nation in starting pay for state troopers. That is a damned embarrassment. It should surprise no one that the State Highway Patrol now has more than 270 vacant positions. We're losing out on talented, service-minded people to other states, local governments, and other jobs because we don't pay our troopers enough. The state also ranks 49th in the country for starting pay for correctional officers. Again, it should surprise no one that the Department of Adult Correction has only half of the correctional officers needed to safely operate its prisons. We're asking people to put themselves in a very demanding, albeit rewarding job, asking their families to sacrifice on our behalf so that they can earn less money than they could if they worked at a Costco. In this critical needs budget, I'm calling for a 10% raise for correctional officers, troopers, and other state law enforcement officers. I will now invite forward Colonel Freddie Johnson, Commander of the North Carolina State Highway Patrol, to discuss the state's public safety needs. Colonel Johnson.
Good morning. Thank you, Governor Stein. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak today about the importance of investing in the men and women who serve our state on the front lines of public safety. Our mission to protect and serve the people of this state and to keep our roadways safe is vital to our state's success. Every day, our troopers and our communications professionals answer that call, often in difficult and dangerous situations. To continue fulfilling that mission, we must address critical need for competitive pay for both our sworn members and our dedicated professionals who staff our communication centers. Our troopers respond to crashes, criminal activity, and emergencies across all 100 counties. At the same time, our telecommunications are the calm voices behind the radio, coordinating responses and ensuring help gets wherever it is needed. Those roles require skills, training, and tremendous commitment. But we are seeing increasing challenges in recruiting new members and retaining experienced ones, as other agencies and industries offer higher pay. Providing competitive salaries is essential if we want to keep the experienced professionals we have and attract the next generation of troopers and telecommunicators for our state. Along with salaries, we must recognize the importance of investing in the infrastructure that supports our mission, from modernizing our facilities and our Viper communication systems to ensuring our equipment and fleet are ready. These investments allow us to respond effectively whenever North Carolinians need us the most. Whether it is a severe storm, a major emergency, or the everyday work of keeping our highways safe, the people of this state expect our highway patrol to be ready at a moment's notice. These investments help ensure that is where we exactly are. On behalf of the men and women of the North Carolina Highway Patrol and all law enforcement across this state, I want to thank the governor and the General Assembly for recognizing the importance of investing in public safety and in the people who make that mission possible. Thank you for your time, Governor. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Colonel Johnson. And while we're addressing the salaries of our public safety officials, we need to make the Department of Adult Correction whole. The DAC has approximately 1,000 more inmates today than it did 3 years ago. And healthcare costs have increased by 10% over the past 3 years. Meanwhile, the state has not passed a budget in 2.5 years. As a result, the department faces a structural budget deficit, even with its significant efforts to cut and manage expenses. For the past year, the DAC has been forced into the untenable position of having to ask vendors to float them on their bills. That is not responsible budgeting for a household. It is surely not the way a $2 billion state agency to manage our state prisons should operate. DAC needs $80 million just to get back in the black. It is time to stop kicking the can down the road. Keeping people safe requires more than prisons and public safety officers. We are all painfully aware of recent instances in North Carolina, in Charlotte, in Southport, in Raleigh, when someone experiencing a serious mental health crisis tragically murdered fellow North Carolinians. That is why I'm calling for a 10% raise for state nurses and healthcare workers who treat people with severe mental illness. Of course, the vast majority of people with mental health challenges pose no risk to themselves or others, but a small minority do when they don't receive appropriate treatment. But too many in need are turned away or forced to wait weeks for that treatment. Meanwhile, we have hundreds of inpatient beds in state psychiatric facilities that sit empty because we don't have the staff to serve those beds. That is a tragic waste. Let's invest in the people who treat other people, getting them healthy and making all of us safer. Our state has so much going for it. This past year, we were ranked the top state for business, the top state for economic development, the top state for workforce development. We're the top state that people from other states are moving to. We had the highest employment growth of all 50 states in the country last quarter. We're experiencing success, and that success is because of our people. And because we as a state have invested in our people through our public schools over the decades. But today we risk hollowing out the institutions that have helped to create that success. That includes our failure to adequately compensate our children's teachers. We are a bottom 10 state when it comes to public school teacher pay. After you've taught for 15 years, you don't get another salary increase for a decade. And starting teacher pay is lower in North Carolina than every one of our neighboring states. Yet teachers drive student success. They are the #1 in-school factor of student achievement. We know this, but we haven't passed a meaningful raise for teacher in years. If we truly believe that North Carolina's kids are the future of our state, then we must make the job of educating them more attractive. This critical needs budget would give starting teachers a 13% pay increase, putting us on a path to raise starting teacher pay in North Carolina to the highest in the Southeast. It would give all teachers nearly a 6% raise on average. It would restore master's teacher pay, and it would provide more pay increases for our veteran teachers. Let's raise teacher pay. Let's put our money where our values are. I will now invite Principal John Lassiter from Perquimans County to the stage to address you. Principal Lassiter.
Governor Stein, thank you for the opportunity to speak for something that has shaped my life, teachers, and public education. My name is John Lassiter. I serve as the president of the North Carolina Principal and Assistant Principal Association, a former Wells Fargo Northeast Principal of the Year, and proud to serve as the principal of Hertford Grammar School in Perquimans County, a small rural community that reflects so many towns across our state. I want to start with a quick story. I know a third grader who missed more than 40 consecutive days of school from Thanksgiving to Valentine's Day because he was in and out of the hospital and extremely ill. He fell behind, he struggled to read, and he felt embarrassed. He was so nervous to read out loud that he would literally sweat when his teachers called on him. I know that third grader because I am him. I'm standing here today because my teachers refused to give up on me. They didn't just teach me to read, they taught me perseverance, hard work, and to believe. I bet if I pause long enough, everyone in this room can think of a teacher who did the same for you. Someone who saw more in you than you saw in yourself. You see, that's what teachers do. They quietly change the trajectory of a child's life. They carry hope into hard places. They stand with a steady voice that says you can. This moment matters because right now too many teachers feel undervalued, ignored, and unsupported. We're asking them to do a job that gets more challenging every year to meet rising needs. Teaching can at times be thankless, and this profession carries an enormous societal burden. A child's zip code should not determine the quality of education that they receive. We want to believe that. But if we're honest, given current levels of funding, right now it often does. If we truly want a highly qualified teacher in every classroom, then our students have to see teaching as a career worth pursuing, one with dignity, stability, and a respectable salary. Here's what I can't wrap my mind around. How can North Carolina be top 10 in the size of its population, top 10 in the size of its economy, and be celebrated as best state for business, yet rank in the bottom 10 for teacher pay, public school funding effort, and per pupil spending? In light of this, there's no reason North Carolina, with our growth, our talent, and our economic momentum, should be asking teachers to carry the future on their back while we fall behind on investing in them. North Carolina is at a crossroads, and a crossroads requires more than good intentions. It requires courageous action. Educators deserve a raise that reflects the dignity and prestige this profession was once known for. And we need to compete for great teachers across the state lines so North Carolina classrooms don't become training grounds for other states' workforce. In Perquimans, we've had to get creative to plan for our future. Our Grow Your Own program, the PQ Ambassadors, have given high school students the chance to work with elementary classes and experience teaching as a potential career. This year, 4 seniors earned the North Carolina Teaching Fellow Scholarship, in part because of the success of this program. We know that students with local roots understand both the assets and challenges of our community. They also will make the most of coming home, teaching, and making a long-term impact in Perquimans County. A professional mentor of mine says that your talk talks and your walk talks, but your walk talks louder than your talk talks. So I'm challenging the General Assembly today to let your walk talk. Find compromise, pass a budget, act, and lead. Help us take a meaningful step towards restoring the prestige that once came with being a teacher. And make the most important investment a state can make, one that pays dividends for generations. Invest in teachers. Invest in our children. Invest in public schools. Because when we lift educators up, we don't just strengthen communities. We don't just strengthen schools, we strengthen communities and lessen the impacts of poverty, equipping the future workforce of North Carolina to make our state great. Thank you, Governor Stein.
Thank you, Principal Lassiter. While we correct pay for teachers, nurses, and law enforcement officers, we must also do right by North Carolina's other public servants, the transportation workers clearing roads in winter weather, the benefits specialists helping veterans get connected to services, and so many others. None of them have received any raise in pay in nearly 2 years, despite inflation and rising costs. Health insurance premiums just went up for state employees. So essentially, our state employees are being asked to do the same job today for less money than they earned a year ago. Let's fast track a raise in pay for state employees and a cost of living increase for our retirees. In addition to our health care, public safety, and public education needs, many other critical public services are underfunded. In this critical needs budget, however, I am not including all of the important needs that state government today faces, because I expect the legislature to pass a comprehensive budget relatively soon. However, there are a handful of other truly urgent needs that cannot wait for them to work through all of their differences. These include the following. The State Bureau of Investigation's operational budget is in the red because its caseload has dramatically increased in recent years. 262 child care programs have closed since the state last passed a budget, in part due to inadequate child care subsidies. And children of veterans who were injured or killed in service to our country are being denied scholarships that we promised them because the legislature has not passed a budget. More than 1,400 of these deserving students had their scholarships reduced, and more eligible students were denied the opportunity to apply because there were no funds. We cannot abandon our promises or neglect our critical services. We're going to work together to develop a comprehensive, fiscally responsible budget for the short session. But before we do that, let's act now to keep North Carolina strong and to address certain critical needs. Together, we can lead our state and stop the bleeding. Let's give North Carolinians the stability they deserve and pass this critical needs budget that makes essential investments in our safety, our health, and our education. Thank you, and at this time, I'll invite the speakers up to join me for the question and answer session, and any of you may address your questions to me here. Deb, why don't you come on this side? Erna, why don't you come on this side as well, please? You can address questions directly to me or any of the speakers, and we have Kristen Walker, the head of the Office of State Management and Budget.
And for question portion, we're going to offer the microphone for people to hear them.
Anyone have a question? Yes.
Hey, Colin Campbell with WUNC News. Dr. Sangva and also the governor, what sort of deadlines are you up against for the Medicaid program? At what point are you going to have to make some cuts to services if the legislature doesn't act before a certain date?
Well, the whole purpose of this critical needs budget is to avoid this chaos. We experienced chaos in the fall. When they didn't give us the money that we needed, we had to reduce provider rates of what we could pay providers to treat people on Medicaid. It created chaos. The courts intervened. We went back to the old rates. If they don't give us the money to fully fund Medicaid, there will be chaos again. Why? It is absolutely avoidable. Let's address it now in the spring when they said that they would, so that we can avoid all the games that we have to go through, the scenario planning and institute cuts when they're unnecessary. Just pass a critical needs budget. I don't know, Dev, if you want to add to that.
Thank you, Governor. I don't know how much more I can add. The governor said it well. The deadline is now. I mean, the result of not getting the funding is we'd have to go back to think about programs and services. And as the governor just said, that creates more chaos, more uncertainty, decreased wellness. So the deadline is now.
Yeah, I mean, to follow up, it looks like they've short session obviously is in April. They're technically in session this week, but doesn't seem to have called their members back to Raleigh. Does this need to happen in March, or could it wait to April?
You take it, sir. The sooner the better. We understand that there are calendars and others, and so if it were priority in April, that would be well appreciated. If there's an opportunity before then, it would be even better. But as you can imagine, the deadline is looming as June 30th gets here, so sooner is better.
Good morning, Dina with CBS 17 News. Republican leadership has repeatedly said that they have until the end of this year to really get a final budget. If a critical needs budget does not happen and they wait until the end of this year, what then?
Things that are breaking will break. We cannot wait and expect people to work for less money on a real basis than what they have earned in the previous year. When we're at the bottom of trooper pay, we're at the bottom of the country in correctional officer pay, when we're at the bottom of the country in what we pay our teachers and how much we invest in public education, you can't afford to go lower. At a certain point, things break. We have so many things that are going well for us in North Carolina. More jobs added in North Carolina than any state in the country in the last quarter. We're the number one state that other people are moving to from other states. We're the top state for business, the top state for business, economic development, this top state for workforce development. These things are great, but it's a result of investments that we've made in the past. We can kill the goose that lays the golden eggs if we are not responsible and pass a fiscally responsible budget.
Thanks. Gary Robertson with AP. Given the results of last week's election, Governor, how would you evaluate your leverage now, given what we've seen and what members of the public want from their legislature?
I think what the election showed is that the voters of North Carolina want action that serves their interest. People of this state want to have safe neighborhoods, safe streets. They want a strong highway patrol. People of this state want a healthcare system that is strong and viable and is excellent all across the state, including our rural communities. They want a strong Medicaid system. People want great public schools that educate our children so that they have skills and knowledge to succeed in what is a very fast-changing economy and world. We need to have excellent teachers in our public schools. They want critical public services. They want our prisons to not essentially go bankrupt, so that they can keep dangerous people safe and secure while they rehabilitate. These are basic functions of state government, and that's what their voters want. These are not Democratic issues. These are not Republican issues. These are not unaffiliated voter issues. These are core North Carolina issues.
I have two questions, one election related and then a budget one. For the election, are you confident in how things are playing out with the Senate Leader Berger and Sheriff Page race? And if it goes to a recount, is that your confidence in the process extend to that if that's where we end up?
At this point, I have no reason to worry that the numbers are not accurate. I have every hope that they are. One great thing about our system is it has a lot of fail-safe methods to ensure accuracy. The margins are very tight. I think it's 23 votes at the moment, and under the law, there's going to be a canvass when that number becomes official after the military ballots come in. And then at that point, almost certainly, Senator Berger will have the right under the law to ask for recount. And it's up to him. That's his decision to do it. It would be if the margin is 23, it would be highly unusual for that margin to be overcome in a recount, if not without any precedent. But that's his decision. But the fact of the matter remains is Senator Berger is the senator for his district, and he cares deeply about his constituents. And whatever happens in that election is truly irrelevant to the work of the day, which is a legislature that needs to deliver for people. And I know he wants to do right by his people. He wants to do right by the people of the state of North Carolina.
Have you, on the budget, it's March, is there already work being done on planning a revenue forecast? And then tied to that, is part of asking for the raises now because you're, I guess, not confident that there would be a budget for the next fiscal year, because I assume these raises would be retroactive for the past year if something is passed.
Yeah, the budget, the raises would definitely be retroactive. No, our hope is that there will then be a short session where we can augment those raises potentially and make additional other investments. And I'll bring Director Walker forward to talk about the revenue forecast.
Thank you, Governor Stein. We are working, so between the Office of State Budget and Management and the Fiscal Research Division at the General Assembly, they are right now working on a consensus forecast that should be released in late March. So we will have that then.
Hey, Will Dorn from WRAL. I wanted to follow up on that same question just now. You know, we've seen your office, Legislative Fiscal Analysis, say that we're heading towards a deficit soon, possibly as soon as this coming fiscal year. Obviously, as you stand up here asking for more money to deal with our state's growing population, is that compatible with our current tax scheme that we have in North Carolina?
Everything that we're asking for in this budget is sustainable over the long term. There are other critical investments. In fact, I'm not satisfied with the pay increases that we're putting in here for state employees, for teachers, for law enforcement. I want there to be even more, because even a 10% raise for starting trooper pay, that's not going to jump us. I think it moves us from 49th to 47th. All right? That's progress. It's moving in the right direction. But who would be proud to know that the state of North Carolina invests in our troopers 47th in the country? We are not a poor state, but we are making ourselves a poor state by reckless pre-programmed tax cuts. And that will be a topic for additional conversation. I mean, we're looking at $900 million less in the coming year if the tax cuts go forward for next year, and then $3.5 billion the year after, pre-programmed tax cuts. This is absolutely reckless in terms of our ability to continue to meet the basic expectations of what a North Carolina resident expects from the state.
Michael Perchik, WTVD. I know there was bipartisan support for the House budget. Has there been any conversation with either House leadership or Senate leadership regarding this critical needs budget and what their temperature is, or their willingness to engage in kind of mini budgets rather than one comprehensive budget?
Yeah. To be clear, this critical needs budget is not in lieu of a comprehensive budget. Clearly, the state needs a comprehensive budget. My fear has been that they will just push off the 2025-2026 budget and just do the short session budget and pretend as if this past year did not exist. Yet, in the past year, we've added many more prisoners to our state prisons. Our workers are experiencing the same inflation as everybody else. And so we need to address those real needs now, but that doesn't mean we will not pass a comprehensive budget. We absolutely must do that. We've had plenty of conversations. My staff has met with legislative staff, both the nonpartisan professional staff of the General Assembly and each of the corner offices where the Speaker and the President Pro Tem work. And so everyone's very much aware of what our thinking is, and I'm optimistic that they will agree. But, they agreed that we needed to increase funding for Medicaid, and they couldn't come to a deal. So I'm hoping that we're at a point in the political cycle where we can put our differences and political disputes behind us and put to the front what is going to help the people of North Carolina, what is going to help them get better education for their kids, what's going to help them have a better healthcare system for their parents and grandparents, what's going to help people on our streets be safer. That's what this critical needs budget is about.
In the Outer Banks with WTKR News 3. We have critical needs here of erosion, NC-12 challenges, and houses falling into the ocean. Is there a plan at the state level to work on addressing those issues to help coastal communities?
The Department of Transportation is surely working with partners in the local areas on the Outer Banks to figure out what makes sense over the long term to ensure the continued operation of NC-12. In terms of houses falling in the ocean, the primary challenge is that for a homeowner whose house is certain to fall into the ocean, they can't get insurance until it collapses. So their incentive is to wait for it to collapse, when we all know it's a matter of days, weeks, months that it will fall. So there is legislation, bipartisan legislation in the U.S. Congress, which is responsible for the National Flood Insurance Program, to, in certain circumstances, allow for a homeowner to get a claim so that we can remove the home in an orderly fashion. It's a ridiculous situation at the moment, but we understand that there are long-term needs for the Outer Banks, and everyone's looking very hard at that.
This is for Principal Lassiter. I'm curious, since you're up in Perquimans County, kind of close to the Virginia border, what are you seeing in terms of losing teachers to other districts, either other states or other types of jobs, and what does that mean sort of practically on a day-to-day basis in terms of filling the classrooms in your schools and others in your district?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm from Perquimans County. I graduated from Perquimans County High School. I was a North Carolina teaching fellow at NC State. And so when I said that a child's education shouldn't be determined by their zip code, I believe it to my heart. It is challenging. We compete to keep teachers that could make 10 or 15,000 more dollars by driving 45 minutes across the state line. Sometimes the joke is I can pay North Carolina taxes and get Virginia salary. And that hurts because our kids deserve a quality education. And so what compounds that and makes it more challenging is that there's less high school students interested in the teaching profession. And so, my challenge is that the goal that we're shooting for needs a short-term solution, but also needs, a long-term commitment. And as the governor said, every state that touches North Carolina pays their teachers more. So yes, for me, Virginia is that state. But as a member of the Principal of the Year cohort, every principal who borders another state fights the same battle, so it's not unique to me in northeastern North Carolina. But thank you for the question.
I'll just add to that I'm at the age where all of my friends are just having kids graduate college, and a good friend of ours had their child graduate from Appalachian State to be a teacher. He was so excited to be a teacher. He's teaching in South Carolina. It was like $10,000 or $15,000 difference, and he wanted to be a North Carolinian. He just could not rationally justify staying in his home state where he wanted to be because of how poor we pay our starting teachers. And this is going to be, the tail on this is decades. If we have an entire cohort of kids in high school and college who simply have concluded that this is not a viable career, I'm not going to even pursue this, we won't feel it until the current generation of teachers have retired and there's no one to take their place. Or those who are not the ones that we would want or choose to be our teachers. So the time is now to demonstrate, not only to our current teachers, but to people who are thinking about being teachers, that we actually value public education, that we think that the people who spend hours a day with our children, trying to give them the skills, the knowledge, the ability to think critically, communicate effectively, that we actually think that it matters who's doing that job. Because right now, I think objectively, people will question the sincerity of the state of North Carolina.
Will Michaels with NC Local. Just a clarification on Medicaid for a second, if I could. I think in January, DHHS was talking about 250,000 people under Medicaid at risk of losing their coverage just under the cuts from the One Big Beautiful Bill. But I'm trying to wrap my head around the timeline because some of those cuts I think happen later this year or even next year. But with the gap that you're saying exists before the end of the fiscal year, I mean, could people start to lose their coverage before June 30th? I'm just trying to kind of understand when that might happen.
That's a great question. There's so many things happening in the Medicaid program right now. Sometimes it's hard to even keep track of them. We certainly have the rebates challenge that we have right now. There are the issues with HR 1. Those two things are separate. What we're talking about today is rebates. That's the funding we need to do same store, same business year over year, largely related to enrollment and inflation. It also underscores the reason why we need to solve the problem now, because we do have the challenges of H.R. 1, the potential for people to lose coverage looming in front of us. So all the more important to get this done now.
Thank you all.
You were just listening to North Carolina Governor Josh Stein talking about his calls for a particular budget to be passed here so that they can at least get some of their critical needs met, as they have now gone about 2.5 years without having this budget passed. They went at the end of last year, 2025, without having it. Some of the key things that you just heard there really quickly, as he's calling for this $1.4 billion critical needs budget, right? He says that Medicaid is short at least about $300 million. They're trying to get money for that. For law enforcement there within North Carolina, they're hoping to get people more money there, and law enforcement saying that they are 49th in the nation when it comes to paying for state troopers and correctional officers as well in North Carolina. They have 270 vacancies right now when it comes to their state troopers in North Carolina. Looking at the Department of Adult Corrections and teachers' pay, a big one that he says there, wanting to give teachers a 13% pay raise starting off for starting teacher pay, 13% pay raise, and then a 6% raise at least for all teachers there. Those were among some of the highlights that we heard there from him. You also heard from a principal in Perquimans County, which is part of our viewing area here for 13 News Now in Northeast North Carolina, speaking to the need for better pay and investment into schools in North Carolina throughout the Tar Heel State. So the question still remains, will they be able to reach a budget? That's been the question for quite some time now, especially as we get closer here to, as you heard, their election season and some of the critical needs that they say are posed at this point. Medicaid as well, at a certain point, the governor is saying that we are going to have to make some difficult decisions for people's Medicaid and their health care in the state of North Carolina. All right, we wanted you to see that in full. Glad that you were able to hear from the governor. We're going to take a break here. We'll be back in just a few minutes on Live Impact News. Thanks for staying with us here for Live Impact News. Not long ago this morning, we heard from Secretary of State Marco Rubio with some updates on this U.S. and Iran conflict that is continuing to ongo here. This as we know that a seventh U.S. service member died over the weekend following those initial attacks there by Iran on the U.S. Associated venues there. Now, we also know that Iran has now named the now deceased Ayatollah's son as his replacement. This after President Trump saying that he did not see that person to be a suitable leader for the country. So we're going to take a few moments here and listen to Marco Rubio, his statements that he just made about an hour ago, and we'll break that down afterwards.
Thank you. I want to welcome everyone here to the State Department. I wish it was on a happier occasion, although we do have things to celebrate in terms of Americans that have been returned, but also we remember those who have not returned. I want to open, first of all, just by stating the obvious. The United States is currently engaged in an operation targeting one of the world's leading hostage taker, the world's leading sponsor of terrorism, the regime in Iran. And first, I think we would all take a moment both to offer our thoughts, our prayers, and our condolences, and to honor the families of those who have fallen, the 7 Americans who have lost their lives in the initial hours of this operation. Incredibly brave Americans, and you saw 6 of them dignified return over the weekend. And we all are all in awe of their service, of their bravery, of their courage. And our hearts and our support extend out to their families in this very difficult moment, and the families of these incredible heroes. And heroic things are happening all the time, some of which will never make it to the headlines. But American men and women in uniform are conducting an extraordinary mission with extraordinary efficacy and efficiency and impact. The goals of this mission are clear, and it's important to continue to remind the American people of why it is that the greatest military in the history of the world is engaged in this operation. It is to destroy the ability of this regime to launch missiles, both by destroying their missiles and their launchers, destroy the factories that make these missiles, and destroy their navy. I think we are all seeing right now the threat that this clerical regime poses to the region and to the world. They are trying to hold the world hostage. They are attacking their neighbors. They are attacking neighboring countries, their energy infrastructure, their civilian population. They're attacking embassies. This is a terrorist government. This is a terroristic regime. And we are seeing them conduct terrorism using nation-state elements, using weapons like missiles and one-way attack drones. And the objective of this mission is to destroy their ability to continue to do that. And we are well on our way to achieving that objective every single day with overwhelming force, with overwhelming precision. The military, the United States military, the men and women in uniform are conducting an extraordinary operation. There are not a lot of cameras down there covering what they're doing, as opposed to some of the other images that you may see from some of the cities and capitals nearby. But I want everyone to know your military is getting the job done. And every single day, this regime in Iran has less missiles, has less launchers, their factories work less, and their navy is being eviscerated. And the world is going to be a safer and a better place when this mission is accomplished. And we are here today, obviously, on something that touches right on Iran, but I think, unfortunately, it's not just limited to Iran. And we're here on the 3rd U.S. Hostage and Wrongful Detainee Day, and it's a day that exists because families and loved ones refuse to let their loved ones be forgotten. We have this day to celebrate those who returned, to honor those who perished in captivity, and commit to returning those who are still in detention and holding also the perpetrators of this accountable. Last year marked 10 years of what they call SPIHA, and the Hostage Recovery Fusion Cell. These were entities that were created with a specific mission of bringing Americans who were justly detained, bringing them home. And because of this mission, because the heart of this mission really can be captured in one word, and that one word is homecoming, reuniting people to their loved ones. 4 years ago, 50-plus families in the Bring Our Families Home campaign created the flag that flies here today. It's a symbol of solidarity. It's a symbol of resolve. It's flown in honor of Americans brought home over the past 3 years and the Americans yet to be brought home to their families. And many of the families and of the returnees and the advocates who made who made those moments possible are with us here today. And we want to thank you for your advocacy, for never allowing us or anyone to forget of those Americans that are unjustly detained. And we're especially grateful to those who themselves were detained. You know, it would be perfectly understandable if you decided, I'm back home, I'm going to go on with the rest of my life. Your willingness to step forward, to tell your stories, and to ensure that other Americans who are similarly situated to where you once were are not forgotten. We're truly grateful. Your persistence, your courage, your love for your family members continues to drive this effort in days like today. As was already pointed out, March 9th marks the day that Robert Levinson went missing in Iran, and actually it was a case that I was also very involved in as a United States Senator, dating back to my very first day in the Senate. In fact, one of the first meetings I had, and to this I credit my former colleague, Senator Bill Nelson of Florida, introduced me to this case as soon as I got elected, and because of Mr. Levinson's ties to Florida. And we remained on that case throughout my career in the United States Senate, and it's one we will not forget. It's indicative of two things: the fact that Americans are taken all over the world, but it is particularly a reminder of the nature of the regime that we're dealing with in Tehran. We're honored to have his sons here today, Dan and Doug, with us. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you very much. And so today, in recognition of their extraordinary dedication, and really everyone's here, but in particular, we've dedicated the flag flown here today to the Levinson family. And I think it's also important to give President Donald Trump a tremendous amount of credit. He has made, from the very first day in office, the return of Americans held abroad unjustly a priority of his administration. And since his inauguration a little over a year ago, over 100 Americans have been brought home.
You were just listening there to Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Again, I told you that we learned over the weekend that a 7th U.S. service member had died in this conflict between the U.S. and Iran, and we now know the name of that individual as well. It's Sergeant Benjamin Pennington, 26 years old, out of Kentucky, enlisted in 2017. The DOD saying today that he died from his injuries that were sustained during an attack in Saudi Arabia on March 1st. So Sergeant Benjamin Pennington, 26 years old, of Kentucky, the Pentagon naming him just within the hour. Again, bringing the total to 7 U.S. troops that have now died in this conflict with Iran. So a lot of conversation, of course, that is taking place right now when it comes to what is going on in the Middle East. A lot of things being impacted as well, even here at home. Before we talk about that, though, we are just hearing from the UN ambassador to Israel, who spoke moments ago with the Security Council. Let's take a listen to his words.
Today, the UN opened the Commission on the Status of Women. This year, International Women's Day theme is Rights, Justice, Action for all women and girls. That theme could not be more relevant. That is why today we are hosting a CSW side event to amplify the voices of Iranian women, women whose rights have been denied and whose calls for justice have been silenced. But today, there is action. Here at the UN, Israel is amplifying their voices. And on the ground in Iran, alongside the US and others, we are confronting the very regime that oppresses them. With me today stand some of the brave lionesses of Iran, survivors, activists, women who have courageously spoken out against the regime, often at a great personal cost. Shiva Amini, Dr. Nazi Munyan, Marjan Kaifour, and Rahel Amiri, who lost an eye after being shot by regime forces during the Women's Life Freedom protests. For 47 years, the regime in Tehran has ruled through fear and brutality. Women beaten in the streets, arrested for showing their hair, dragged into prison for demanding basic freedoms. A regime that rapes, tortures, and kills women who dare to stand up. But Iranian women do not surrender. They resist. Just last week, the Iranian women's national football team, the Lionesses, refused to sing the regime's anthem before a match in a silent protest against the Iranian regime. They were immediately branded traitors and threatened on state television. That is the regime we are dealing with, a radical Islamist regime that spreads violence across the region and wages violence against its own women. To the women of Iran, I say this: your enemy is our enemy. Stopping this regime is not easy. Israelis are in and out of bomb shelters. Our neighbors in the region are under attack. But allowing this regime to threaten the region and continue its oppression is not an option. So we will continue to target the leadership of the regime and dismantle its nuclear ballistic missile capabilities. As the machinery weakens, you, Mardumei Iran, the people of Iran, will have the opportunity to shape your future with rights and justice for women. In the past 11 days, Iran has fired missiles and drones across the region at Israel, at our neighbors, and at civilian targets. The regime has attacked more Arab countries in the past 11 days than Israel has in its entire existence. This is not defense. This is aggression aimed at destabilizing our region. That is why we welcome the statement you issued by the Gulf Cooperation Council condemning the Iranian regime's attacks on civilian targets and its violation of international law. The Gulf countries also called on the Security Council to clearly condemn these attacks and demand that Iran stop immediately. We agree. The Security Council must act. It must make clear that these attacks are unacceptable and that Iran must stop and surrender. Let me be clear. Changing the man at the top does not change the regime. It is the same ideology, the same nuclear ambitions, the same ballistic missiles, the same terror proxies. For us, nothing changed. My advice to Tehran's new leadership: look at what happened to those who thought they could threaten the US and Israel. Israel remains committed to the objectives of this joint operation: to dismantle the regime's nuclear ballistic missile capabilities and weaken the machinery that allow it to threaten the region and oppress its own people. We hope that soon the people of Iran will have the opportunity to rise up and share their own future. Let us pray that by International Women's Day 2027, Iranian mothers, daughters, grandmothers will stand here themselves speaking for a new reality in Iran, where women finally have what they have been denied for too long: rights and justice. I want to thank the esteemed guests that we have today, and I invite you all to join us at the event we will start momentarily. Thank you.
Thank you. If you have any questions, make sure they're directed to the ambassador. Yes, it's Pamela Falk from U.S. News and World Report. To the ambassador, you thought the Strait of Hormuz might open up a little faster than it has. It's virtually closed. When do you think that might happen? And I know you said not to ask the women, but we'd like to hear from the women what they think of the new appointment of a new Supreme Leader. Is it more of the same, and what can happen next? Thank you.
So regarding the Strait of Hormuz, as I said a few days ago, we control the airspace in Iran. We are hunting the launchers. We are degrading the capabilities of the regime. So it's going to be harder for them to attack civilians in Dubai and to attack vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. It doesn't mean it will be 100% guaranteed, but it will be harder for them to do that. So I'm optimistic about that. Every day we see the numbers of the attacks going down. Regarding your question, it's up to them, not up to me if they want to address it. But you are welcome to join us, Pamela, at the conference. and we're going to have time for questions and discussions.
Ambassador Adla Massoud, the National. So today the Lebanese the Lebanese president said he's willing to engage in direct talks with Israel. Is Israel willing to engage in direct talks? Or do you think Israel should finish its military offensive first before?
We are a peaceful nation. We believe in diplomacy. But it takes more than declarations. And I tell the Lebanese leaders, take action against Hezbollah. Hezbollah started to fire rockets into Israel in order to show support for the Iranian regime, to the Ayatollah regime. They wanted to avenge Georgi's death. So that's not acceptable. If the Hezbollah will be restrained, then we are open to dialogue. And we had a very good dialogue with the Lebanese government before.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. My name is Abdul Hamid. The first day of the clashes, your Air Force targeted a school in southern Iran, killing 165 young girls. So how can we believe that shedding crocodile tears about Iranian women when you went and killed these young girls?
So I addressed this question a few days ago. We're looking into these incidents. We do not believe that the Israeli Air Force was involved in that incident. But we have to say it very clearly. We do not target civilians. We target military infrastructure. The Iranian regime, they're doing exactly the opposite. If civilians are being hurt, we regret that when we say that. Same goes for the US. But the Iranians, they do exactly the opposite. They target cities, they target airports, not only in Israel, in 12 countries in the region.
You've been listening there to Israel's UN ambassador, Danny Danon there, right? We heard a lot of things from him there in relation to the U.S.-Iran conflict, with this being on the heel of International Women's Day. He's calling for more rights for the Iranian women there, speaking to this conflict at the moment. Again, he also talked about the regime change and the need for changes in leadership by their estimation, and that comes on the heels of the now late deceased Supreme Leader's son being named to replace him. All right, that's the big news that came out of there when it comes to leadership in Iran over the weekend. But another thing that we're really keeping a very close eye on is something that you're going to see when you head to the pump. When you're trying to fill your tank, you're going to notice those prices are up again. Gas prices increased again over the last few days. Now it looks like more than 50 cents a gallon more than what we were just a week ago. Joining us to talk about this, Matt McLean, Gas Buddy. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Matt. We had you on at the early portion of last week. That was before we kind of started some changes. What are you all kind of seeing now in these trends that the conflict has reached well over a week?
Well, with the national average up again, as you mentioned, 51 cents a gallon to $3.45, I wish I had better news. The problem is that it is not going to stop. We're looking at a potential 20 to 50 cents per gallon this week. With the
and you
price
just said there, wow. Go ahead,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I was just going to say the 20 to 50 cents more per gallon this week. It is certainly a possibility, more of a probability. I wish that were even the worst news. The actual worst news, diesel prices rising 85.9 cents in the last week, and nationwide diesel prices may rise an additional 35 to 75 cents per gallon. That is going to create a problem, not just obviously at the pump for each and every one of us, but when you have such a dramatic increase in diesel prices, that's how all of our goods are shipped to local stores. Everything from produce to unfrozen meats, never frozen meats, as well as dairy products. Those are the things you'll start seeing potentially the extra shipping costs beginning to become factored into that price point you pay on the grocery store shelf. So unfortunately for all of us, that is going to be a sincere problem going forward, not just in how much we are personally paying at the pump, but having a trickle effect, if you will, as we go throughout other aspects.
And just doing the quick math there for an additional 20 or so cents there outside of diesel. So you're talking about for those who are just every day pumping gas, at least about 70 cents that we're looking at here in the very near future. More.
That is correct. And that is our analysis based on what has already happened in the conflict. So we feel fairly secure about that. Now, as you mentioned, we talked earlier last week. On Monday, we had an initial forecast, and that seems like an eternity ago, but if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was 10 to 30 cents per gallon for gasoline on our Monday forecast. On Tuesday, we added an additional 10 to 25 cents per gallon on top of Monday's forecast, so in addition to, and then I think on Thursday of last week, we revised that forecast even further upward compared to where we were at on Monday and Tuesday. So I hope that is not the case this week, but it is also, it's not a guarantee either. We are looking at prices continuing to increase. I want to also throw out, we're not going to have a supply issue. That is not in the cards for America. In fact, we export oil. We've got plenty of oil. We are having a price issue, and that's because oil is traded on the global scale, utilizing U.S. dollars as its currency exchange, but it's far deeper than that. It's just that the oil market itself is a global market, and so when we have a 20% supply disruption, courtesy of the Strait of Hormuz effectively being closed, everyone is going to be paying the price. By the way, folks in Asia, for example, they are having and will have a supply issue as a result of Middle Eastern oil being effectively cut off.
And I'm so glad that you broke it down that way for people. And I got to ask this. Is there any type of precedent in your time there with Gas Buddy and that you guys can think of when we have a situation like this and the longer that it kind of draws out, that the predictions keep changing? And what did we see, if so?
Typically, we really are fairly good at saying, here's what's going to happen 7 days from now, and the dart will usually hit very close to the bullseye. When we have an ongoing conflict that is highly unpredictable, that's where we start running into a problem. So we kind of flip it on its head and do an immediate post-analysis of everything that has already taken place in the conflict that we feel will have a direct impact on oil prices. And no one, not a single human being on Earth knows where the next missile is going to land in order to know exactly how it's going to be extrapolated into the price point of what we're going to be paying at our local gas stations. So we have to look at this with reality in that we just don't know until we know what happens going forward. I do think, however, it seems fairly safe to assume the conflict remains ongoing, and it is more likely than not it will continue on into this week, possibly a lot longer than that, depending upon who you speak to.
And I would say you guys at Gas Buddy have always been phenomenal, Matt, as well, in what you guys do. We depend on you so much for these predictions. You mentioned the Strait of Hormuz. Let's get back to that really quickly for our viewers here. Can you, again, kind of break down why that is so important when we're talking about this particular conflict and what we're seeing at the pump?
Yeah, the Strait of Hormuz, at its most narrow point, is roughly 20 to 21 miles wide. It borders multiple Middle Eastern countries that are members of OPEC or OPEC Plus. And because of not just saber rattling this time with Iran, but a direct threat and even acting on that threat a handful of times over the last week, that has effectively shut down the Strait of Hormuz, which is responsible for transporting 20% of the global oil supply on a daily basis. What that means, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, any other country that borders the Strait of Hormuz is now unable to get their oil supply out. That has caused multiple nations to ramp down oil production because they are out of local storage. So once this ends, this conflict, and once we can get things back to a state of normalcy, we will take a while longer in order to reposition tankers, get them to the ports, ramp oil production back up because they had to ramp it down, and it will take a good while to simply unwind this price increase once the conflict is over, provided that there's nothing major that takes place that could hinder oil production even further in these neighboring states from missiles and or potentially drones from Iran.
And that's on top of, isn't it around this type of year we typically see some form of increase anyway with the time of year, the switch between the type of the oil that is used as well? I'll let you say that better than me, but don't we typically see some changes this time of year anyway?
Yeah, I am normally a glasses half full, all smiles kind of guy on a daily basis. And most of my friends chide me on that because I do try to remain in the best mood possible. But I was also a news anchor and a field reporter for 27 years, and this is not the time to smile. We have some serious road ahead of us, unfortunately, and possibly some additional bumps in the road. And exactly what you talked about. The summer blend of gasoline is something that America will be slowly switching, or not is, but is currently switching over to gradually as temperatures rise from south to north. That is a more expensive product to refine. It carries additional ingredients to help with air pollution. In other words, reduces or helps eliminate the smog in urban areas. So yeah, that we are still working through in the springtime. Normally we kind of maximize that price point somewhere around Memorial Day weekend and plateau through the summer, and then prices slowly fall as we move toward fall, as autumn. But in true reality, I am looking at this conflict where it's kind of thrown a hiccup into a lot of different ways that we view things when it comes to gas prices, and kind of turned everybody on their heels a little bit to making sure that we get it right.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for your time this morning and breaking all that down. I mean, we knew that there was going to be an impact. You guys broke that down for us for sure. But to see, as you said, the uncertainty that's happened there and what we're seeing right now in the pump, I'm sure we're going to be coming back to you probably next week if it continues to linger into that. Matt, as always, thank you so much for your time.
Sure thing.
Good to hear from him there, but you heard at the end there, he was saying not a time necessarily for smiles because of what we're experiencing currently on top of, you know, the regular season that we typically see here with this conflict that is happening in the Middle East. So when you're at the gas pump and you see those prices, it is a direct causation of what we're seeing taking place right now between this conflict because of that global supply chain that Matt just talked about there. It is 11:45 right now, 11:44 and 35 seconds. Still, it's 45. We're going to take a quick break here, and we'll be right back for more Live Impact News. Thanks for staying with us here for Live Impact News. We're now going to go to New York, where we heard from Mayor Zohran Mamdani not long ago about an incident that took place there at the mayor's mansion, in which during a protest, he says allegedly somebody threw some form of incendiary device. We're going to listen to him as he shares what took place and what they have found in their investigation so far.
Good morning. On Saturday, a protest was held outside Gracie Mansion, where I live with my wife, Rama. Neither of us were home at the time. This was a vile protest rooted in white supremacy entitled Stop the Islamic Takeover of New York City. I'm the first Muslim mayor of our city. Anti-Muslim bigotry is nothing new to me, nor is it anything new for the 1 million or so Muslim New Yorkers who know this city as our home. While I found this protest appalling, I will not waver in my belief that it should be allowed to happen. Ours is a free society where the right to peaceful protest is sacred. It does not belong only to those we agree with. It belongs to everyone. I will defend that right every day that I am mayor, even when those protesting say things that I abhor. Let me also be clear about something else. New York City will never tolerate violence, whether from protests or counter-protests. Many of the counter-protesters met this display of bigotry peacefully, with a vision of a city that is welcoming to all. But a few did not. Two men, Amir Balat and Ibrahim Kayumi, traveled from Pennsylvania and attempted to bring violence to New York City. They are suspected of coming here to commit an act of terrorism. There is video of these two individuals throwing two devices towards the protest. The police department has determined that these were improvised explosive devices made to injure, maim, or worse. Thanks to the swift and decisive actions of NYPD officers at the scene, both men were immediately taken into custody, and the devices they brought taken off of our streets. I want to commend the officers who were on site. They faced a chaotic situation that very quickly could have become far more dangerous. NYPD Chief Aaron Edwards and Sergeant Luis Navarro ran towards the danger so that others could run to safety. They are here with us now, and I want to thank them today publicly as I did yesterday privately, and to thank the dozens of other officers who responded without hesitation. That is courage, that is selflessness, and I'm deeply grateful to both of them and to every member of the NYPD who works every single day to keep New Yorkers safe. As the NYPD continued their investigation yesterday, they found a third suspicious device in a vehicle on East End between 81st and 82nd Street. Out of an abundance of caution, they conducted a number of limited evacuations of nearby buildings before removing the device from the area. Once the device was removed, those evacuated were allowed to return to their homes. I am grateful for their continued work to keep New Yorkers safe. And let me say this plainly. Anyone who comes to New York City to bring violence to our streets will be held accountable in accordance with the law. As this case continues to develop, I will remain in close contact and communication with our police commissioner. I want to say thank you once again to everyone who acted on Saturday to protect their fellow New Yorkers and to uphold the values of this city. Now I would like to invite Police Commissioner Tisch to say a few words.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everyone. First, I will tell you that we are not at liberty to discuss many aspects of the ongoing investigation at this time due to the pending prosecution. The suspects here, Amir Balat and Ibrahim Kayumi, are going to be prosecuted in federal court here in Manhattan, and a complaint will set forth criminal charges and the factual allegations supporting those charges. After that complaint is made public, which I expect to occur later today, I will be able to say much more about the investigation and what we have learned in this case. But it is crucial that we respect that process and not get ahead of it. That being said, I can confirm this morning that this is being investigated as an act of ISIS-inspired terrorism. I can also provide some additional information building on my remarks from Saturday evening. At that time, we were beginning to conduct preliminary analysis of two devices that were ignited and deployed earlier that day, one in a crosswalk on East End Avenue and East 87th Street, and the other on the west side of East End Avenue between East 86th and East 87th Streets. That testing was performed by the NYPD's bomb squad and FBI special agent bomb technicians in consultation with an FBI chemist. Preliminary test results determined that these were not hoax devices nor smoke bombs. They were improvised explosive devices that could have caused serious injury or death. Part of our initial investigation was to determine what energetic substance, if any, was used in the two devices, and our analysis showed that one of the devices deployed by the subjects contained the substance triacetone triperoxide, known as TATP. Now, TATP is a dangerous and highly volatile homemade explosive that has been used in IED attacks around the world. Our bomb squad then rendered safe both devices. And as of now, explosive evidence samples are being sent to an FBI lab for further testing. Our investigation also led our detectives to a vehicle that was tied to the suspects. And yesterday afternoon, patrol officers found that car, a black 2010 Honda with New Jersey plates on East End Avenue between East 81st Street and East 82nd Street. Using a robot, the NYPD's bomb squad was able to find another possible suspicious device and materials inside the car consistent with the first two explosive devices, and the area was immediately frozen and cleared. A limited evacuation of certain floors and certain nearby buildings was conducted while the officers secured the vehicle and removed this third device, which was transported to Rodman's neck for further testing. This third device tested negative for explosive material. Once the scene was secure and deemed safe, residents were allowed to return to their homes. Now, we have been in a heightened state of alert in New York City since the start of hostilities in Iran, and we remain in that posture today. We will continue to deploy additional counterterrorism resources throughout New York City, including heavy weapons teams, K-9 units, aviation, and more. The NYPD is vigilant and determined in our unceasing efforts to ensure the safety of this city and the security of its 8.5 million residents. We also cannot lose sight of how serious this situation was. The last time that an IED targeting people was deployed in New York City was in 2017 when Akayed Ullah detonated a device strapped to his torso in the pedestrian underpass connecting the Port Authority bus terminal and the Times Square subway station. No one other than the attacker was injured in that incident, and once again, we were fortunate that the devices used this weekend did not cause the kind of harm that they were certainly capable of causing. But luck is never a strategy. Devices like these have the potential to cause devastating harm, which is why the NYPD does thorough counterterrorism investigations and treats every incident of this kind with the highest level of urgency and care. And it is why we remain vigilant. The safety and security of the entire city ultimately rests on the judgment and the courage of the men and women of the NYPD. And on Saturday, we saw that in its truest form. When those devices were ignited in the middle of a crowded protest, officers did not step back, they stepped forward. With me today are two of those officers, Assistant Chief Aaron Edwards and Sergeant Luis Navarro, who ran toward a lit IED without hesitation and without regard for their own safety. Acting as police officers do, on instinct and training to protect people they did not know and would likely never meet. Moments like that remind us what policing truly requires, because behind every counterterrorism operation, every bomb squad response, every emergency call that sends officers running towards danger, there are human beings who make the decision to step forward when others are running away. Chief Edwards has been a uniformed officer for nearly 23 years. He is, as of December, our newly minted borough chief in Manhattan North. Chief Edwards joined this department after witnessing the heroism of NYPD officers on September 11th. And on Saturday, we saw that same spirit carried forward in the way that he responded. Sergeant Navarro has spent the past 11 years serving the city he grew up between Puerto Rico and New York, eventually settling in Washington Heights and the Bronx, and joined the NYPD after a close friend encouraged him to take the exam. On Saturday, he and Chief Edwards responded with the calm judgment and professionalism that situations like this demand. Together, they represent the dozens of cops who were safeguarding that protest Saturday afternoon, and the nearly 35,000 members of this department who stand watch over New York City every day. Our entire city owes all of them a debt of gratitude, and although I've said it to them many times already, I will never tire of it. Thank you for your service. We'll now take some questions.
Thank you, everyone. We have time for a few questions. We'll start with Jake, AP, right here. Right here. Sorry, we have a microphone, too.
I know you can't really go into so much detail at this point, but given that you are saying this is an act of ISIS-inspired terrorism or being investigated, can you give
Sorry,
us?
could you just speak up a little bit more?
Yeah. Can you just give us any sense as to what information you may have to indicate that this is, possibly ISIS-inspired? Also, the commissioner mentioned the heightened state of alert related to the war in Iran. Any indication at this point that there's a connection? And then just also, do you know why they wanted to come to New York in this protest in particular?
So I'll pass this over to our commissioner to answer some of the specifics.
So, Jake, at this time, we do not have any information that connects this investigation to what's going on overseas in Iran. As to the other questions that you posed, I don't want to say anything that could introduce prejudice into the prosecution or do anything that will make the prosecutors' jobs more difficult. What I can say is that the complaint, I expect, will be unsealed later this afternoon. And once that happens, I will be at greater liberty to discuss and answer the questions that you pose.
Thank you.
So there you have it there, hearing from the mayor of New York that 2 homemade bombs were tossed and one dropped there outside of his home, the mansion there in New York City. They say it is ISIS-inspired, but would not share what they know that led them to gather that intel. That happening during protests that took place here recently in New York City. Your time right now is 11:59. We are done here for Live Impact News. Up next, you'll have 13 News Now at noon with Ashley Smith, and then another Live Impact News stream from 1 until 3 right here on 13 News Now Plus.